Moving here will be good for me. I know it. Being away from the bustling hive of the city. They say the ocean air is good for the soul, you know, and something of the sea has always called to me, ever since I was a young boy. Every family getaway, I would remain apart from the other children, choosing instead the company of the sea. I'd instead breathe alongside its crashing waves, sitting so close I could feel the salt water spray against my cheek, staring into this impossibly vast abyss. I could never go in, though. I could never push my comfort over my fear, feel that darkness swallowing me up. Even dipping my toe in the ocean or hanging my feet over the dock, it would bring upon me this vicious vertigo, one that could only otherwise be felt by an ant, or less than an ant. So small, so far from understanding. I apologize, Nicola. I know you hate to hear such ramblings. I hope you're right about this. Your devoted brother, Theodore. It has been more than a week since I first moved here, and I must admit I am surprised. While I certainly do not feel worse than when I first arrived, I did not expect to feel so very isolated. Rose-tinted memories of this place from my childhood had led me to believe it was a much brighter place. Calmer, somehow, I suppose. But that is not the case. There is something of this island itself which seems to wish me gone. I feel the wind whisper to itself as I walk past. The mud does not seem to wish to stick to my boots as readily, and even the birds quiet at my approach. And there is something wrong with the people. They're a superstitious bunch, and I somewhat expected as much, but it runs much deeper than just that. Children look at me through furrowed brows, splitting away as I meet their gaze, and mothers close their blinds as I walk past. The only person I could as much as utter a word to me was a barkeep, Lachlan, and even he could not seem to fully meet my eyes. After getting past the usual niceties, the weather and so on, I leant in to ask him why the townspeople look at me as if they'd seen a ghost. I was just joking, of course, at least I thought I was, but the barkeep didn't laugh. He just looked at me with this expression, halfway between pity and fear, on top of the man who had stayed in my cabin last. He was a quiet man, an Englishman like myself, but though when he first arrived he appeared normal, by the end he had grown into quite the recluse. His eyes always to the floor, muttering strange stories to himself, his hands wrapping and winding themselves around each other like worms, barely leaving his cabin. Before all of that, he and Lachlan had grown quite close over the months he had stayed on the island. They shared a passion for literature, a drink, and they would talk and talk about their dreams and their hopes and passions until the sun would rise. I would have liked him, he said, in the beginning anyway. But as the months went by and winter slowly strolled in, something changed within him. Lachlan began to see less and less of him, and even on the rare occasions he would see him, there was something in his eyes that was somewhere else, somewhere cold and somewhere deep. After weeks of watching his friend retract into himself, he managed to pull him aside to talk. It was the last time anyone would see him alive. He had seen him shouting by the sky by the docks, and finally had the courage to go up to him. He tried his best to talk to him, but he didn't seem to recognize anyone was there. Eventually, he grabbed onto his shoulders, hoping at least to stop him from swaying. Back and forth and back and forth, as if his feet were tied to an old creaking ship in a storm. There was a moment, he said, when there was a flicker of the man he once knew looking back at him, and he finally turned to face him. He took Lachlan's face in his hands and, with a warm, broad smile, told him not to worry, that he had found himself a wife, the most beautiful, mesmerizing wife, and she was going to belong to him, and that he would belong to her.
Do 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 do.